Thank you for having me. I just want to correct Jeff. It is Anastasia, but the Russian pronunciation is Anastasia, like to rhyme with Maria, and sounding a little bit like on a star, see on a star, Anastasia. And the books are called the Ringing Cedars of Russia books, or just the Ringing Cedars books. And they started coming out in Russian in 1996. And the first English translations came out in the beginning of 2001. And I'd like to tell you a little bit about myself. I started working on myself when I was 17, consciously. I was living in white upper middle class suburbia, Westport, Connecticut. And for people like me to be doing drugs at that time was completely unheard of. A few of the older kids had done a little bit, and then my class, there were quite a few of us who hit it pretty hard. And when my parents found out, my father asked me if I wanted to see a psychiatrist. And I said, yes, I think I would. And so my first path was Menninger trained, shrink, psychiatric psychotherapy, client-centered psychotherapy. And I did that all through college, and then came transcendental meditation. Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, the Beatles guru. And I ended up working extremely closely with him. I lived in the room next to his. I brought him his food and his clothing. I traveled with him. I became a spokesperson. And I organized everything around him. And I worked very deeply in that movement for 5 years. And then I went on to work very deeply with 3 other teachers and go deeply into practices of Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Native American practices, Hawaiian practices, many different types of meditation. And I spent quite a bit of my life seeking, reading, looking at other teachers, and trying to help people heal and awaken, working with other people. I started writing books. I started to have a following as a spiritual teacher. But I didn't feel I was really living it like I thought I could. And so I stopped for 10 years. And then a new meditation came to me that I called the Love and Forgiveness Meditation. And it did what nothing else had done. So I started writing books and teaching again. But still, I knew things were eluding me, that there was something profound that I was missing, that there was something profoundly wrong with the world. And none of the seeking and studying and being with teachers and reading and looking and, looking within myself and meditating was getting me where I felt I wanted to be. And I had stopped having teachers for decades. But then a friend just said, oh, I'm reading these books. And something about it caught me, and I started reading them. And I couldn't believe it. Right from the beginning, I felt that the knowledge in these books was light years, millions of light years, beyond anything I had ever encountered. That the practical understanding, this woman, Anastasia, I had had a lot of respect for certain teachers, in particular Ramana Maharshi and Maharishi's teacher, Brahmananda Saraswati, because they never came west, they were never corrupted by the West. They spent decades in seclusion, in silence, in nature, and I felt they had a lot of integrity, and they weren't motivated by the kinds of things that motivated the people who came to the West, who wanted the power and the glory and the money and the sex and all of the rest of it. Whether they did it first or not, that's where most of them ended up going. But Anastasia was born and brought up in the wilds of northern boreal Siberia, the boreal forest. She was given birth by very wise parents, and they were right near this very powerful and very rare Siberian pine tree that the author of these books likes to call a cedar tree. And the Russians, I think, call it a cedar tree. And it's called a ringing cedar because it has so much power that it rings. And it has so much power that if you're in the wrong place when you break off a branch, it can kill you. And that's what happened to her parents when she was a toddler. Her parents were killed by this tree. And before she could really speak, and when she could barely walk. And her very wise grandfather and great-grandfather knew to leave her there because she was already being taken care of by the animals who lived in that area, including a bear and wolves, and squirrels would jump up onto her hand and spit pine nuts into her mouth. And people who read these things, they think, oh, this is fantasy. But it's not. She's realer than all of the rest of us put together in some ways. But this is how she grew up and how she continued to live. No hut, no building. She had a trench that she had, dug out that she could sleep in. But otherwise, she lived totally with nature. The grasses and the berries and the pollen and, all of the things that grew there naturally is all she needed to survive. She didn't have to think about food or cultivate it or grow it. And she has access to what the Indian traditions call Ritambara Pragya. Most people know of it as the Akashic Records. So she can access knowledge of the world anywhere, any knowledge. And she has what she calls her ray, which we all could have if we lived as she did. And she spends her life working with people, helping them, and helping the planet. And this man was meant to found her. His name is Vladimir Migret. And he's her love and champion and conduit to the world. He's a bit clueless himself. He can be frustrating as an author. And he often is unable to truly value her, although he grows as he writes. But her words, he very beautifully has brought her words to us, unsullied and in their potency and in their power. And there are transmissions in these books as well. So a whole movement has grown up around her spontaneously. Her books have never been advertised, and they've sold over 20 million copies. And most of those 20 million people, or more, many people have read it that have not bought the books. I got them through interlibrary loan and through the library. Many of them have been transformed by these books like very few things in the world have transformed people. And what she has done is she has given people back a kind of a divine dream that we all have deeply within us, but that we've lost. And not only have we lost it, but it's been purposely obscured, suppressed, and buried deep within us for thousands of years. There are so many things in these books. She writes about the inception of the control that began in ancient Egypt at the earliest times of the pharaohs, where these particular priests consciously began to control and manipulate the human race in that area at that time, but then more and more and more. And they continued their manipulation and control. And it got into, the financial systems of the world and into the whole money setup of the world. And she writes about the inception of this, and she clarifies where the control came from that now totally controls our world, and that we're all really slaves to this life nullifying system of the rat race of making enough money to pay the bills and be a consumer and be cut off from nature and live in little cells and prisons and all the rest of it. So she has this way of growing food where the food is programmed to heal your body like no other food could possibly nourish you and heal you. And what she recommends is that people, couples, families, individuals, whoever is inspired to, that they go out and they find a plot of land, a hectare in size, which is whatever it is, 10,000 by 10,000 square meters, 2.5 acres, which is just about the perfect size for a family. And they turn it into a Garden of Eden, an earthly paradise that completely supports and sustains them. They plant hundreds and hundreds of perennials that grow food, herbs, healing herbs, fruits and vegetables and berries and nuts and all the rest of it, and trees. They plant a living fence of trees and bushes and whatever those things are called, hedges around their property with an entryway. And it's quite possible for a family to do this. And they do it in eco-settlements. So there are hundreds of families who are doing this, and the whole area becomes a multiple Garden of Eden for each individual family. And they each do it individually from their own creativity, co-creating with nature, co-creating with God, co-creating with the plants, co-creating with the animals. And they create the space of love that brings them closer together, nourishes and sustains them, and amplifies the love and the purity, the pristine purity, the pollens that get created, the energy of the plants, the love that is generated between the people and the plants, and even the animals. And hundreds of thousands of families are now doing this throughout the world. Mostly in Russia and the Ukraine and Belarus and a lot of the other, Slavic, Soviet, ex-Soviet countries, but also in many, many other countries throughout the world now, ever since people started reading these books. And this is completely different from being a farmer. A farmer who grows food for money, and monocrops or just a few crops. This is creating the original pristine vision of God, of the divine, that we each live in a paradise, in a Garden of Eden. So this is helping the ecology, the planetary ecology, more than anything else that I know of on planet Earth. All of these Garden of Edens sprouting up all over the world. And they also have a different way of educating their children. I've written 2 pages on these books. There are 10 of them. And these 2 pages are on my website, which is my name, Mark, M-A-R-K Landau, Landau.com, mark-landau.com. And you might want to read these 2 pages. This new way of education, these families coming together in love and creating spaces of love and gardens of Edens, the unbelievable knowledge that these books contain about so many other things than what I've spoken. For me, personally, they go so far beyond everything else I've ever heard of, encountered, read about, studied, done. I have no money. You know, I didn't care about money and career. So now I'm paying for it. But I live very well, and I hope to get my hectare of land someday. But even if I don't, this shining future for me in this lifetime or another, for the human race, where we move away from our dependence on the life-nullifying, technocratic, artificial existence that we live in these penned-up cells of apartments, and even our homes. People have gardens, but they don't turn their acres of land, their entire habitat, into gardens of Edens. It's just, on the one hand, inconceivable, and on the other hand, how could we not be living that way and conceiving of it and doing it? So there's a 1 hour, I have 2 links on my website, her protocol for growing food. This Hawaiian guy made a 1 hour video that shows one of the kin's domain. They started in the beginning calling them kin's domains for you and your kin, you know, one family plot, one family homestead, and then eco settlements, and this new way of educating children and all of the rest of it. So I invite you to go to my website, mark-landau.com, and read the 2-page thing. And if anyone has a question or two, I have 2 minutes. The first book is called Anastasia, or Anastasia, by Vladimir Megre, M-E-G-R-E. And you can buy the whole set, but he's in conflict with the English language publishers. And so a lot of the individual books are out of print.
Mark, I've read the books. I've read several of them. It's been a while, but it made an impression on me that was really remarkable. I felt like there was real truth in the midst of all the reading, even though it seemed ridiculous and wild, but it was very impressive.
Thank you very much for that. You can still hear me, right?
Yes.
Thank you very much for that. I would very humbly recommend that you go back to them and read all of them from the beginning all the way through. To a lot of people, it seems ridiculous. It seems impossible. But I believe that not only is she realer than all the rest of us put together, but she exemplifies what we really are meant to be, what we really can be, and that eons ago, before the fall, and before, you know, in the pristine origins of our beginnings, of our, you know, our early existence, that we weren't primitive people murdering animals and beating women with clubs. We were divine children of God, and that she is living that like almost no one else on earth has for quite some time. And that's what we all can live and what we're all meant to live. So I'm glad they touched you so deeply. But with new eyes, you might consider, I know people who have read all of the books 7 times or 3 or 4 times. And I thought, well, why would they have to do that? But I'm in the last book now, and I can't wait to begin them all over again. So thank you very much for that.